Hello and welcome to today's Monday Live, where you have me, Stephanie Camilleri, founder of the ADHD Advocate, and
And
Eleni.
Eleni Sferudis, the ADHD advocate here in New York. So thank you for joining us today.
Yes, hopefully in London anyway, Eleni. It's been sweltering this weekend, very, very hot. So
Here, just hoping for some much needed rain in New York, which I think is coming sooner rather than later.
yeah. So today, guys, we're talking about rejection sensitive dysphoria. We call it RSD for short because it's a bit of a mouthful, let's face it. But it's actually, I would say, probably the most crippling trait of ADHD. And thankfully, more knowledge is increasing around RSD and ADHD. But quite often, right, Eleni, we have people, ADHDs, come to us that have never heard of this thing called RSD before.
Yeah, and just to recap what Stephanie said, it's the perception, or usually just the perception, that you're being rejected or perhaps missing out on something or being excluded. And a lot of what we work on in coaching is sort of getting around this image that we can create for ourselves in our heads. But I've seen with my clients, and especially my university students, with the rise of social media, this has really been made worse, I would say, in the last couple of years.
Yeah, most definitely. Unfortunately, social media hasn't helped a lot of things, but yeah, particularly in terms of self-esteem, just that feeling that you're not good enough, which unfortunately ADHDers have the wiring in us. You know, as much as our ADHD is wired into us, unfortunately, it seems that RSD is the same way. So Dr. William Dodson, he came up with this concept, a psychiatrist, I think, in America. And yeah, it's been a revelation because try as you might, even with CBT, because it's so wide into us, RSD is not something that we can eliminate. Have you noticed that too, Eleni, that it will hit, and it's just a matter of how we navigate around it and how quickly we can recover from it.
Very much so. And what I work on, especially with my clients, is how to sort of navigate around maybe the situations that might invite RSD, and to help clients and students in particular kind of maintain perspective. And as we know, Stephanie, especially from social media, you're never getting the whole picture there. But unfortunately for students that maybe have always grown up with social media or some sort of an online connection, it's very hard to think about life without the medium of social media. And for us in the good old days, if you weren't invited to something, you just weren't invited, and you sort of moved on. But now with Facebook and with Instagram, that event is magnified, and that can just exacerbate this perception that we can tell ourselves.
Yeah, that's so important, the point you're making in relation to perspective. Yeah, there's so many things about ADHD that just compounds every other challenge, but particularly RSD, that inability to kind of get perspective, to keep perspective. It's all contextual, and a lot of ADHD is insight and in mind. And let's face it, social media, right? Very much insight and in mind. And, that standard, often unachievable, that perfectionist standard that's kind of flaunted and expected to be achieved in social media, and just always falling short. It just reinforces that narrative that's already there for ADHDs in terms of not being good enough.
Yes, that's exactly right. And we keep coming back to the university students, because I do notice that this is where I notice this symptom of ADHD sort of most prominently. And we've actually started taking a more formalized approach to how we can serve and support our university students. And we've built that into our university academic success program, where it's a combination of, yes, of course, the academic support, which we ADHDers know we need. We can chat more about that. But really, we're building in the social support component, and RSD is a huge part of what can really, really cripple our students once they leave home and once they're sort of left to their own devices to navigate these situations.
Yeah, particularly if you're a university student, or you've got a child that's a university student that is flat sharing for the first time, or boarding, they're at college. because with school, and RSD is obviously a problem for our kids with ADHD, in particular in the playground, like without that kind of structure and being left to their devices, and the negativity biases and lots of interactions with people, you know, that could very much trigger RSD. At least with the kids, they can come home. You come home and you've got that safe refuge, and you've got that kind of space where you feel protected, and you've got the parents that you can sense check things with, and that can hopefully set you on the right path, and, you know, be able to help set you up for success on all the other side of things. But you can imagine, as a university student, when you start flat sharing for the first time, right? You know, you go back from your lectures to your flatmates. And we've seen in coaching quite often, when the problem is when the interactions go wrong with these flatmates, there's no getting away. And that's unfortunately where we see quite often. I've had clients where the academics suffer because literally one interaction, you know, in the flat that went wrong, that's enough to trigger that RSD. And we've seen this in the workplace with people with RSD, our ADHD employees, that's all it takes. It's the RSD actually that disables them from performing academically or, you know, in the workplace, because that emotional dysregulation is so crippling.
It does trigger a whole host of other symptoms. You mentioned the dysregulation, anxiety really kicks in, and that's when our self-esteem can really take a hit. And it takes time to recover from that and recognize what it is many times just a perception, but getting ourselves to sort of work through that is tricky and takes time and help in coaching.
Oh, definitely. So yeah, in terms of strategies, again, like we've said, it's wired into us. There's no real magic pill either that can help, although there are medications that Dr. Dodson has highlighted that can help RSD. And so again, if you've got a university student or any RSD issues that you want to speak to a psychiatrist about, definitely have a chat to them. But what we've found in coaching, we talk about naming it to tame it, or at least minimizing the effects. That really helps our clients with ADHD to be able to create space to identify the situations that are triggering RSD, and then to either try and create, you know, set themselves up for success to avoid certain situations, or kind of brace yourself for them, you know, be able to acknowledge that these things are probably going to trigger RSD, but then asking yourself, well, what can I do to minimize the impact of it? And coming up in coaching with strategies to be able to help get out of it sooner and to keep perspective, you know, quite often using the body double strategy, but then also we do a lot of communication skills-based coaching as well, do a lot of role playing to help ADHDers navigate communication more safely, which should reduce RSD instances, or at least that's the hope, isn't it, Lenny?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The role playing is so important. As Stephanie mentioned, it can be one situation that could, you know, absolutely derail a student in particular, and just being able to anticipate and prepare can make a world of difference, and sets them up for success socially as well as academically.
Yeah, and then just finally, just to talk about the main things that ADHDers do as a result of the RSD and to avoid it. People pleasing, right? It's one of them, you know, because if you're always saying yes to everyone, they should like you, right? So ADHDers have issues, major issues with boundaries, which university context, right? That's going to be a problem, you know, going to those parties, or, you know, not telling people to keep it down while you're trying to study for that big exam. All these kind of things, you'll be amazed at how pervasive this is. You know, there's perfectionism as well, you know, in order to be above reproach. You know, if I do this thing perfectly, then I won't get criticized. Now, obviously, that doesn't work either at university when they've got so many competing deadlines and projects. That's right. You just don't have the luxury, do you?
Not at all. Not at all. And getting an ADHDer to accept the idea that it doesn't have to be perfect can take quite a bit of convincing and a bit of persuading. But often, as Stephanie alluded, we can get in our own way, and coaching can certainly help maintain that perspective and help clients just recognize that recognize that there's much more to the situation than maybe that they're working up in their heads.
Yeah, very much so, because of our negativity bias and catastrophization happens to all of us. So yeah, creating that space for them to kind of get clear about what's going on, to get perspective in session as well around what's happening, so that they can, you know, they're armed to do something differently, to set intention and navigate these things in a way that doesn't trigger their RSD so much. The final thing is avoidance. ADHDers will avoid. If they feel they're going to fail, if they feel that, you know, they're not going to be good enough at that thing, they stop trying, they disengage. We do not want that to happen, particularly our university students. Quite often, why they drop out, right?
Yes.
They just,
yes.
yeah.
And as Stephanie suggested, that is exactly why we have recognized that these needs have been consistent with our university student clients. And that's why our academic success program is going to address all of these things. It's the recognizing that we're telling ourselves, maybe we don't know this topic as well as we do, but in actuality, when you're working with a coach, you can quantify it. And that's what we help our students do. And they recognize that they are far better poised to achieve success than maybe they're telling themselves. So that's one aspect of the program. The social skills sort of encompassed with the role playing is another. And it's all within that structure, that body double strategy Stephanie mentioned, so that we are keeping our ADHDers accountable and they're getting the work done that they've committed to do.
Yeah, and they're in a safe, supportive place with other people that have the same worrying, the same challenges, that get it, which is key. That's key for our ADHD, is to be able to kind of be able to overcome some of these challenges and not get in their own way, because some of them have got huge potential. So yeah, we're very excited to be launching the academic success program for university students, which will kick off with the university readiness program in early September. So we will be circulating details around that, and definitely do reach out, express your interest if you'd like a place on that program. Because yeah, what we do now, getting them clear now and helping them, you know, look through the right lens,
yes,
is going to transform, you know, their outcomes, definitely.
Absolutely. Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Okay, so yeah, just reach out to us. We are here and definitely would love to help. We understand how difficult this is. Don't try and do it alone. All about interdependence, not independence, at the ADHD Advocate, in the words of Dr. Hallowell, aren't we?
That's right, Stephanie. That's right. Thank you all for joining us today.
See you later. Have a good week.
Bye-bye.